Yeah, what up, folks? We back at it again. So we got a '03 Mitsubishi Lancer. Customer states his vehicle is not starting. He believes it's the starter and all these other things that he brought to the table. And he asked if I could check it out for him. So I came through and I went through the fuse box and I found a pop 40 amp fuse. Right. This is for the ignition. In order to get the vehicle move, we just put a 30 in, get the vehicle started, and that also blew. So I decided to go a little further and figure out, why this vehicle is popping fuse, right? So I got my fuse saver hooked up right to where the fuse belong. That says a 40 amp. It goes in. Let me see if I can get the picture of it. 40 amp, which is a big fuse. This is the fuse right here, right? This pop. So what we did, we just put a 30 amp fuse in place just to, get him to move the vehicle, right? So we could get back to the shop to at least diagnose it properly, because where he was parked, we couldn't diagnose the vehicle there. So we drove the vehicle started, came to the shop, right? I hooked my fuse buddy up with my fuse saver. I got the one with the buzzer, and this is a 30 amp. So right now I'm just gonna reset this. Right, so I got the fuse saver there. Right, so we're gonna confirm the client. We're gonna confirm the client complaint. Right, I'm just gonna hook my amp clamp. So I put like 600 amps. I'll hook my amp clamp around my fuse saver, around one leg of the fuse saver like this. And I'm gonna make sure my buzzer is reset. Alright, this is the buzzer, so you'll hear it give out a loud beep, and once it trip, I can reset it this way without going through fuse, right? So let's see how much amperage going through this fuse. Right, so right now I'm not seeing, what's that? 0.9 amp. Right, when I turn the ignition, I'm seeing like 65 amps, and you hear the buzzer is basically going off, right? So let's switch this off. Hold on real quick. The way to switch it off is basically let me switch the key off, right? And you see that you're basically getting nothing on the dash, right? And we are getting like 65 amps, right? So that's a lot of amps going through that fuse basically, and the max is 40. So let's look up a wiring diagram and figure out what's on that fuse leg and see if it's an easy fix or is very hard. So yeah, what up? So this is a diagnosing procedure I'm going to share with you. What I'm going to use to attack this vehicle outside. Right, I got this from my boy Mike. This is his diagnosing procedure that I've actually incorporated into a lot of things I do. Right, I'm not gonna read it out, but I'm just gonna get you closer so you can just take a look at it. Right, basically from interviewing the customer straight down to documentation, using knowledge and things of that nature. As I said, I'm just gonna get a little closer. Matter of fact, I'm just gonna put it up so you can take a look at it later on. Right, so. Alright, so in this vehicle outside, customer states that his vehicle is not starting, right? He's not getting any anything on the cluster, his radio, things like that, right? So that sounds like electrical issue, it's not a mechanical issue or anything like that. So that would send me down to that path, right? So I think he said he checked the battery and things like that. He swapped the battery and he still was having the issue, right? So I got out there and I did some checks, and what I did, I checked the fuse box first to see, first I confirmed what the customer was experiencing, which was the loss of power, no start, crank, no start at all, not even a crank. So that also sent me along the path that something to do with the starter, right? So I just kept that in the back of my mind. And then I decided to just pop the fuse box and just check out the fuse, right? And when I did that, I saw that the 40 amp ignition switch was blown, right? So when that was blown, I'm like, all right, that's a large, a large fuse. I mean, the consumer for that has to be, big. It won't be no small, like no light or something like that, because they would be like a little fat 7 or 10 amp or something like that. So this one, in order to blow a 40 amp, it had to be something that, that carried a lot of load, right? So with that information that I have here, right, and the information that I gathered from the customer, I was able to just make some quick notes, right, which I'm going to share with you, right? He said the fuse, we know the fuse blew, right? And when, I believe he said he popped in the next fuse and that also blew. So that means it was basically like a short to ground. It wasn't a fully open circuit. So it's a short to ground where it's intermittent. One minute he gained the crank and next minute he's not. So that is why the fuse keep blowing. So in order for it to blow 40 amp fuse, right, it had to be like excessive current, right? And you can tell by how the fuse blow, you can tell how, what kind of short to ground you have, like if it's a turmoil or if it's excessive current, depending on the gap of the fuse, right? That's something that you're keeping back in mind too, right? And he said also the meter, the gauges don't work, no crank, no start, no power window, right? Also, like it knocks off the leg of the whatever the ignition is controlling, right? Which is the radio, the clock, all those things like that, right? So that also took me back to some of the things that, Scanner Dana and stuff like that told us on the premium channel and also his free channel, right? Basically, the higher the resistance, the lower the current, right? So that keeps, you got to keep those little things that you picked up along the way in the back of your mind, because the higher the amperage, you got to figure out what the short is, basically, right? In order to blow a 40 amp fuse. So, all right, so the next thing I did was I just print out the wiring diagram for the circuit, right? So the fuse, which is, let me see if I can just zoom out. Right, the fuse is the number 4 fuse, which is this one right here, right? This is a 40 ampere, and this is the 30 amp power for the power windows, right? So it's actually knocking out that as well too. And when I just hold on real quick, these just some printouts I had, right? When basically you get no ignition, it knocks out the power going to the fuse box on the driver steering wheel, right? So that led me to the bigger picture coming off from the main fuse box, which is under the hood, right? So let's put this like this. All right, so with the printout, I was able to visualize what is going on that circuit, right? So as you can see here in the ignition switch, right, with the key on lock, right, power, they have no power basically, right? And when I put it to accessory, I'm sending power to this leg number 6 of the circuit, right? So this one will put power to the relay box, which is the clock and the audio system and the dome light and stuff like that, and they will go down to this power control mirror, which he don't have, which is a 7 amp, right? So if you notice this small amperage fuse on this leg, right? So that when I really check it, that's not big enough to knock out a 40 amp, right? So then when you go to ignition 1 and 2, when you go to ignition 2, it sends power to this leg number 6 and number 4, and this now goes to the AC system, the headlight, the tail light, turn light, stuff like that. Still, that's 7.5 amp, right? It's not enough to knock out a 40 amp. That's what I'm thinking, right? Whatever it is, had to be something of a large consumer or a large, big load, right? And then when I'm going to ignition 2, right, turn the key again, it sends power to this second leg here, which is where the meter, the gauge, the MFI, which is the multi port fuel system, and you send power to the power windows and all these things here. But still, these are small, technically small loads, which is like 7.5 amps, right, across, right. The dome light is like 15 amp. That's like the largest one in the wipers and stuff like that. That's a 15 amp fuse. But my train of thought was, if it was something along these legs to blow these fuse, which is a 10 amp and stuff like that, it will knock off these little small amp fuse first instead of the 40 amp. Alright, so what I did after that, I kind of put these to the back of my mind, saying, well, I could always come back to that. I could check the fuse, but I believe those are not the issue, because most likely the gauge and all of the wires for these 7.5 amps and 15 amp fuse, that it'd be small. They're not going to put a 40 amp or anything on a 40 amp circuit, right, with that small gauge wire, right. So that sent me to this leg of the circuit, right. So when I turn the key to start, right, when I turn the key to start, I'm seeing that I'm getting like 65 amps max, right, off, which is a large load. I mean, a large enough amperage to blow that 40 amp fuse. So that shifts my focus to, to this leg of the circuit, right. So it's only when I'm turning the key to like running position is where the fuse is being blown, right. And on that circuit, you have the transmission, the MFI system, which is the coil and stuff like that, the ignition system, and the starting system, right. All right, cool. That kind of put me a train of thought, like, all right, let's figure out this thing, man. Is it the transmission? No, I'm not even moving. Is it something in the transmission could cause it? Yes, but I highly doubt that right now, because I'm not moving. I'm not blowing the fuse when I'm driving, right? The next thing I'm thinking about the MFI system. All right, what else was on the MFI system that can cause that to blow? It could be a coil, right? It could be a coil. It could be, let's say, a stuck injector or something like that. Yes, but let's think about it this way, right? The coil is getting a signal from the ECU, but I gotta turn the ignition on first, right? And I'm not even getting the ignition to come on. So that kind of sent me to the starting system, because the client did say that he wasn't able to start, right? And you're not even hearing the starter turn over. So let's go to the start, and this was the first, this was the 40 ampere, this one blew, and let's put this in perspective here. All right, so this is the starting circuit, right? So off the battery, right, coming down to the starter, right? So this will be the main cable right here, right? On this leg of this cable, it will have a 100 amp fuse by the battery right here, right? So that also give me a like a hint that is not on the main cable, because that main cable will have blew, right? But still, that if it was touching something, if it was short to ground, this main fuse would have blew, right? But it was still intact. As I said, I was getting like 65 amps, right? When I'm turning the key, and it blew the fuse, right? So that sent me to the next side of the starter, which will be on the S post, right? So this is the S post leg right here, right? So when you put the key on, right, on start position, right, that's when the fuse is blowing. All right, so what that did right there, hold on real quick, this is like this. Hold on. So I'm going to shift my focus to this leg of the circuit, right? The MFI circuit is a branch off of the ignition circuit going to the starter. So when it starts, it sends a signal this way to the, let's say, the coil, the injectors, and so on, right? And this is the starter here, right? So I gotta check this leg of the circuit. Alright, so we still got our test equipment hooked up to this vehicle, so we're gonna use that with the wiring diagram. Probably do a little few wiggle tests to see if this short will raise his head. I got my test light hooked up to the fuse saver also. So you know, if I see anything like a glowing bulb or anything like that, that will help me, you know, get a visual. Yeah, so while I have one of the guys turn the ignition key, I noticed that the smoke coming from between the airbox and the battery, right? So normally where you see smoke is, you know, there's the issue, right? So we're gonna remove everything from, you know, this area and then investigate to see where it's coming from, right? So it was a really faint smoke, you dig, but as I said, it was enough for me to catch it, you know. I could have used a thermal camera and things like that, but I'm really hoping that it's in this area, probably rubbing on this bracket or something. So let's take this apart and see what we get. Alright, so as I said, man, let's remove this airbox and then take a look at what's going on under here. I tried my, what do you call it? The Power Probe 3000 ECT and all that good stuff, but I don't think I need that in this instance, right? I believe this is where the short is coming from, so we just want to remove all these items, I mean the airbox and things like that that's in this area, and that should, you know, give us some kind of insight on where the short is coming from, right? It's definitely got to be a large gauge wire because, as I said, man, they're not gonna put a 40 amp fuse on no small gauge wire. So I believe it's the one that's going to the S post, right? So let me just move my equipment out of the way and take a, you know, look. And basically, this is where it's at. This harness here is rubbing against this bracket for the air duct, and I believe, you know, this is it. So we're just gonna, you know, cut open this area here and hopefully, you know, see what we need to see. Yes, the knife is kind of big for this, but bear with me, man. Right, just got my guy taking this apart while I'm taping. Right, I'm expecting to see a large gauge wire here, the one that's going to the starter and the one going to the S post. And there you see, this wire is definitely the one going to the S post, and you see the condition is squeezed and it's also burned. So it didn't break. So I'm just gonna put some tape on it, and we're gonna redo our test. And I believe this is the fix, right? It had to be the starter system, the MF, which is the multi-fuel ignition setup, or the transmission, right? So upon, you know, checking, I saw that the starter wire was touching, making contact with this bracket here, and it's a heavy gauge wire, right? So I went and disconnected the signal wire to the S post on the starter, and I noticed that my lamp was still, you know, flashing. So when I came here, I saw the smoke, right? And that's what led me to this wire here, which is a black and a red stripe, and that's the same wire that's going down to the starter right here signal, as you can see. Yeah, so here we're gonna call our fix. All right, so we was able to do a little temporary repair on the conduit right here. Ran out of black tape. Alright, so let's start this off. Right now you see I'm getting like 9 milliamps, which is real good. I mean, the fuse didn't pop again, and I'm confident enough to say that this vehicle is fixed. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. Right, yes, he has some issues with this vehicle where it sounds like a belt or other thing, but he didn't come here for that, right? So I'm just gonna pop this fuse in, and that should be it. So yeah, this is how I find short to ground. I mean, this one was really easy, you know, but I was showing you the process that I take to, you know, diagnose these cars on a regular basis. So yeah, I hope you like what you saw. Don't forget to share, leave a comment, you know, whatever I could have done differently, let me know down in the box. Until then, take it easy.